Ever lost to Stafford Gambit, or better, want to win games in 10 moves? You are about to learn one of the most dangerous traps Black can play against e4, and beginners always falls for it. The Stafford Gambit begins after e4, e5, and here you play a symmetrical position as white. Now, note this is not a blunder of a pawn as whites can take, but this is a very deadly trap you are setting. The trap begins right after white captures the knight. And you can see right from this position that black already has a faster development. You can see that the bishop on f8 already has a diagonal and can easily develop, so as the knight on c8. And you can start by developing the bishop, and when in your games you come across this move from white, you can simply stun your opponent, sacrifice your knight, and most often than not, white sees that this is a free queen and rushes to capture it, and you slam him with the bishop check and mate. Now, take for instance your opponent plays something different. No matter what white plays, the motive is usually the same. Let's say white plays knight to c3, as strengthening his center. You can still develop your bishop, and he develops his bishop ready to castle. You can quickly jump in with your knight, threatening to capture the pawn on f2. Now, this is the most common response from beginner players. They often see that my pawn is under attack, my king is slightly exposed, I need to castle. And the moment they castle, you slam them with this queen move. Now, this move does two things. It renews the threat of taking the f2 pawn, and it also threatens mate on h2. Teammate and a pawn, which is more important? Obviously mate. So most beginner players stop mate and leave their pawn hanging. This position, it is classy to capture to the knight, as you attack the queen and you also threaten a discovered check whenever this knight moves. White doesn't want all of that, and he sacrifices his rook, and you simply capture back. You look at this position very well. It seems that you have traded a knight for a rook and a pawn, but even better is the exposed king, and the attack launches soon on the king. Note that this king is on check, and this king cannot afford to come here, as it gives black a tempo to start an attack. Let's say he goes there, you can easily drop back with your bishop, give it check, and this is the only square king can go. You can come back with your queen, threatening a checkmate on the h2 square, and white's only option is to move to g2, as no other piece can defend the h2 square. Now, the moment the king moves to g1, it gives you this brilliant bishop sacrifice, threatening yet another mate. And no matter what white does, the white's king is definitely cooked, and you as black is winning this game. Let's take for instance, they don't develop any of the minor pieces, but yet push for attack, hitting the knight. You can simply jump in the center with the knight, and oh my goodness, this is my favorite trap. We use this particular trap to win a lot of my games. I just developed my bishop, and white often is short-sighted and captures. Then you can simply sacrifice your bishop for the king. Now note, the king cannot take as the queen hangs. The king is forced to come up. Even with that defense, you can still check the king yet another time, and the king is forced to capture, and you win the free queen. But what if white doesn't play e5? Let's say white plays d4 instead of d3 that was played previously. You can still come out threatening to mate the king, and most often white players play this with the initiative of, while the queen moves away, he can easily develop the bishop on the g2 square and castle, and life is good for whites. But later did he know that he can sacrifice on this particular square, and he cannot capture back like this because his rook hangs. Rather, he will capture back like this, and even at that, his rook still hangs because he can give a check, and after all the defense, you pick up the rook and you are still up material with lead in development. You can feel free to try out these traps in your games and tell me in the comment section how you crushed your opponent. Now, in this particular position, white played this, and you still continue with the Standard Stafford Gambit routine, bringing out your knights, attacking the king. White played bishop to e3. You can simply capture. After you capture back, the king will definitely attack your bishop and also getting development, but you simply support with your queen. And notice how this bishop has a great line of sight in white's position, as the king cannot castle either way. And very quickly you deny the king is castling right. If the king should move here, the king is obviously stuck. But if the king moves here, you can simply castle, and notice how your rook is on the same file with white's queen and white's king. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Moving over to this trap, this is the most popular and the most fallen for. And if white decides to react to your threat of mate in one by castling, taking the knight is actually a bad move, as you can simply swing down with your queen. And in general, after all said and done, white ends up in a very devastating position with black species all developed. This rook has to sacrifice itself in order to avoid the king from getting me. Now, let's say you're actually a pro player and you feel that your opponent will know the best moves to play and the best engine defenses to play and will not fall for the Stafford Gambit trap. Then even at the best defense being played, you can still come up with this line, which is actually better for you. White's king is exposed and your king has castled. Rook can come into play, same as your queen. Your bishop is active and white pieces just lack enough development. I'm sure this is a huge compensation for two pieces. You have crushed your opponent previously and you want to crush your opponent again. Start with bishop to f2. You can simply go for this line where you have lots of options. You can castle king side, bring your rook to the center, hitting the queen and also putting more pressure on the e4 pawn. And with white exposed and undefended king, you should definitely win this. Now, this is the last and not the least, as you can still go for this variation, and this is the second most played variation, the Stafford Gambit. And most players often defend or stop checkmate by moving the pawn to g3, but this is actually a mistake, as the pawn on f2 cannot capture because the bishop on c5 pins the pawn to the king, and after you move, most players has black to white's king a little bit, and I've seen this in a couple of top players' game. They know it's definitely checkmate, but they just keep checking the king to assert this level of confidence. You can try it out. It's really fun. They finally check him, as checkmate is inevitable. If you have watched this video this far and you like the content, you feel that I add value, please like, please share, please subscribe. A comment on what you think or how you have used this Stafford Gambit to crush your opponent. See you in my next video.